Ladies and gentlemen, let's not waste time, because when it comes to cheating, time is the first thing that slips through your fingers. Here's the truth. A woman who cheats cannot hide forever. She may smile, she may laugh, she may even swear that nothing is wrong. But trust me, her actions will speak louder than her lips. And if you're paying attention, there are always signs. Always. Today, I'm giving you the 3 biggest red flags a woman leaves behind when she's stepping out of the relationship. 3 signs that, if ignored, can cost you your peace, your trust, and sometimes even your dignity. Sign number 1: her energy shifts. When a woman is invested, she pours into you. Her texts, her calls, her curiosity about your day, it flows naturally. But when she's cheating, that flow slows down. Suddenly, her energy is elsewhere. Conversations feel forced, the spark fades, and you feel like you're talking to a shadow of who she used to be. That is not random, it's intentional, because her emotional connection has been redirected. Sign number 2: her routine becomes unpredictable. She used to be consistent. You knew her patterns, her habits, her little rituals. Now there are gaps, excuses, late nights, or sudden, "I'm busy" replies. Let me be clear, women are planners. We don't just switch routines for no reason. If her schedule starts changing without explanation, don't just accept it, ask yourself what's behind it. And sign number 3: her intimacy with you changes drastically. This is the one most people feel before they admit it. Either she withdraws, pulling back affection, or suddenly she's overly attentive, almost performing. Why? Because guilt is powerful, and guilt either builds walls or overcompensates. Intimacy doesn't lie. If her touch feels different, if her kiss feels hollow, or if her passion suddenly spikes out of nowhere, you need to pay attention. Now listen, this isn't about paranoia, and it isn't about stalking through phones or social media. It's about awareness. A woman who cheats always leaves signs, but whether you choose to see them, that's on you. So, I'll leave you with this: don't ignore the shift, don't excuse the inconsistencies, and don't silence your intuition. Because the moment you stop paying attention is the moment you give her the space to play you. Thank you. Cheating always leaves evidence, whether it is visible to the eyes or felt deep within the gut. Human beings are creatures of habit, and in relationships, this truth becomes even more apparent. When someone is genuinely committed, their actions reflect it consistently. They show care in the small things, their presence has a rhythm, and their energy aligns with love and loyalty. But when a woman begins to cheat, that natural rhythm changes, and it is impossible for her to maintain the same level of consistency without slipping up. This is why cheating is never truly hidden. It always leaves a trail of evidence, no matter how subtle or disguised. One of the first ways evidence shows up is in behavior. You may not notice it at first because changes often start small. She may become slightly distracted during conversations, her response is shorter or less enthusiastic. Maybe she laughs less at your jokes or forgets to ask about something that once mattered to her. These are not outright confessions, but they are signs of energy being withdrawn. Evidence of cheating is rarely a smoking gun in the beginning. Instead, it's a slow build of inconsistencies that create a sense of unease. Over time, these small changes form a pattern that is hard to deny. Another form of evidence is in communication. When someone cheats, their words often betray them even before their actions do. Lies, no matter how carefully crafted, have cracks. She might start offering too many explanations for simple things, over-justifying her whereabouts, or adding unnecessary details that don't align naturally. On the flip side, she may avoid explanations altogether, becoming vague and defensive when asked about her day or her plans. Both extremes, over-explaining and under-explaining, are signals that truth is being masked. You don't have to dig through her phone to notice this. If you pay attention, the change in tone and delivery tells its own story. The evidence also surfaces in how she treats the relationship itself. A woman who cheats begins to deprioritize the bond she once valued. Dates that once excited her now seem like obligations. Shared plans are pushed aside, and she finds reasons to be elsewhere. If she used to be warm and nurturing, you might notice her becoming colder, quicker to dismiss, or irritated by things that never used to bother her. Emotional withdrawal is powerful evidence because it signals that her investment is no longer fully with you. It's not that she suddenly forgets how to care, it's that her care is being redirected. Physical cues provide another layer of proof. The way she carries herself may change, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically. She may put more effort into her appearance, particularly at times when she is not with you. She may guard her phone more closely, turn it face down, or keep it out of sight in ways she never did before. Body language also reveals truth: less eye contact, less touch, less openness in posture. Or in some cases, she might overcompensate with exaggerated affection, hoping you won't notice the cracks. The body cannot lie for long. It either retreats or performs unnaturally, and both are forms of evidence. Beyond behavior and appearance, evidence can also be felt in intuition. People often underestimate the human ability to sense when something is off. You may not have hard proof, but you feel the distance. You notice the lack of alignment. You pick up on the pauses, the hesitations, the energy that used to feel warm now feeling cold. Intuition is not paranoia, it is an internal alarm system tuned by the consistency you have known in the relationship. When that consistency breaks, your spirit registers it even before your mind processes it. This inner knowing is perhaps the strongest evidence of all. The most important thing to understand is that cheating cannot be maintained without consequence. A double life is exhausting, and cracks will always show. A woman who cheats may think she has covered her tracks, but her actions, words, and energy inevitably reveal the truth. Evidence may not come as dramatic confrontations or undeniable proof, but it is there in the subtle ways she disconnects, in the inconsistencies that don't add up, and in the emotional absence that becomes too loud to ignore. Cheating always leaves evidence because relationships thrive on honesty and presence. When dishonesty enters, it disrupts the flow that once felt natural. Lies are heavy, and they leave fingerprints on behavior, communication, intimacy, and connection. You don't need to become a detective to see it. You only need to pay attention, trust yourself, and acknowledge what is in front of you. Evidence may not shout, but it whispers consistently until you can no longer pretend not to hear it. When people talk about the signs of cheating, one of the clearest and most undeniable clues is the shift in energy. Relationships are built on an exchange of energy, attention, affection, care, and presence. When a woman is faithful and fully invested, that energy flows consistently. It shows up in her words, in her excitement to see you, in the way she listens, and in how she engages with your world. Her energy is vibrant, warm, and directed toward nurturing the bond. But when she begins to cheat, the energy that once came naturally starts to shift. It doesn't just disappear, it gets redirected, and that redirection creates an emptiness that you can feel. This shift rarely happens overnight. It creeps in gradually, sometimes so subtly that it takes time to notice. She might start by being less present in conversations, offering shorter responses, or being distracted by her phone while you're together. What used to feel like genuine interest becomes surface-level engagement, as if she's physically there but her mind is somewhere else. You might catch her zoning out or giving half-hearted reactions when you share something meaningful. That fading spark is evidence of her emotional investment being channeled elsewhere. When a woman is building a connection with someone new, the energy she once devoted to you gets split, and no matter how carefully she tries to balance it, you will sense the loss. Another way this shift reveals itself is in the effort she puts into the relationship. In the beginning, there was eagerness. She wanted to text you, call you, hear about your day, and share hers in detail. That eagerness turns into obligation when her attention starts moving away. She may still check in, but it feels forced, almost like she's doing it to avoid suspicion rather than out of genuine care. The tone of her voice may lose its warmth. The messages become shorter, the phone calls less frequent, and her excitement less noticeable. Energy cannot be faked for long. The lack of authenticity is always felt. Over time, you might also notice her becoming more irritable or impatient with you. Things that never bothered her before suddenly spark arguments. Small flaws or habits she used to overlook now seem magnified. This happens because her emotional energy is being divided, and what remains for you is often laced with guilt, frustration, or disinterest. When someone invests in another relationship, they subconsciously compare, and that comparison alters how they react to their current partner. The tension you feel is not random, it is a byproduct of the emotional energy she is giving away elsewhere. The most painful evidence of an energy shift is the absence of intimacy. Intimacy is more than physical touch, it's about closeness, affection, and the sense of being connected. When she cheats, intimacy often declines, not because she doesn't know how to love, but because her love is being reallocated. Her hugs might feel hollow, her kisses less frequent, and her body language distant. Even when she's near, there's a wall. In some cases, she may try to compensate by showing bursts of sudden affection, but even that feels inconsistent, almost performative. Real intimacy has a flow, while guilty intimacy feels uneven, either withheld or exaggerated. What makes an energy shift so telling is that it doesn't require hard evidence to be noticed. You don't need to go through her phone or follow her around to sense it. The truth speaks through how she shows up in the relationship. You feel the lack of effort, the missing enthusiasm, the disconnection in her presence. Human beings are sensitive to energy, especially from those we love. When it changes, we know it, even if we try to ignore it. That gut feeling you get when something feels off is your mind picking up on the small cues of her fading investment. The reality is that cheating disrupts balance. It forces a person to split their energy between two worlds, and that split always shows. A woman who cheats may try to mask the difference by being polite, by keeping routines, or by pretending that everything is normal. But energy cannot lie. When her excitement for you fades, when her conversations with you lose depth, when her affection feels restrained, the evidence is already in front of you. It may not come in the form of text messages or confessions, but it is no less real. The shift in energy is often the first and most powerful sign that something is wrong. It lingers in the silence between words, in the lack of connection in her eyes, in the half-hearted gestures that once carried meaning. You can't touch energy, but you can feel it. When it changes, it leaves you unsettled, questioning, and searching for answers. Cheating always leaves marks, and the most undeniable of them is the shift in how she gives herself to you. Energy tells the truth even when words do not, and once you notice it, you can no longer deny that something vital in the relationship has changed. When someone is cheating, the truth often hides in plain sight, and one of the clearest signs is a sudden change in routine. Human beings thrive on patterns. We wake up at certain times, we have familiar habits, we follow predictable rhythms in our daily lives. In relationships, those patterns become even more obvious because partners learn each other's routines over time. You know when she usually calls, how long she takes to get ready for work, when she likes to run errands, and what her evenings look like. That consistency builds trust and security, but when cheating enters the picture, the rhythm is disrupted, and those disruptions are rarely random. They are signals that something is happening outside the normal flow, and if you're paying attention, you'll notice. At first, the changes might be small. She might start coming home later than usual, blaming work or unexpected errands. Maybe she suddenly has new obligations that she never mentioned before, or she seems vague when explaining how her time was spent. What used to be predictable, like her Friday night plans, her workout schedule, or the way she spends her weekends, becomes harder to pin down. This shift in routine is not just coincidence. It reflects the need to make room for another person, another set of plans, or simply the cover required to keep her secret. Even if she tries to make the changes seem innocent, the lack of consistency is a sign that her priorities are shifting. Another common clue is in her availability. Where she once answered texts or calls quickly, now there are unexplained delays. She might claim to have been too busy or too tired, but the frequency adds up. When a woman is cheating, she often has to juggle communication between two people, which inevitably alters her response patterns. If she used to check in regularly, her silence will feel louder than before. If she suddenly starts being overly careful about when and how she replies, that's evidence that her routine is no longer centered on you alone. Time management becomes divided, and the shift in availability reflects that division. The creation of new routines can also be revealing. She might take up a new hobby, join a new class, or develop a sudden interest in things she never cared about before. While growth and change are natural, the difference here is in the secrecy or vagueness surrounding these new activities. If she can't clearly explain what she's doing, who she's with, or why it matters, chances are those routines are not as innocent as they appear. In some cases, she may overemphasize these changes, repeating excuses often as if to make them believable. But repetition without authenticity only draws more attention to the shift. Routine changes also affect the way she interacts with you. She may become less consistent in making plans together, canceling at the last minute or creating reasons why she can't commit. Date nights might become rare, or they may start feeling rushed, as if she is trying to squeeze you into an already crowded schedule. The flow of the relationship loses stability because her time is no longer being managed with you as a priority. What feels like neglect is actually the redistribution of her attention. These constant cancellations, new commitments, and erratic behaviors are not accidents. They are the evidence of a routine altered by infidelity. Another layer of this evidence lies in the details. Pay attention to how she talks about her day. If her stories start sounding inconsistent, if the timelines don't quite match, or if she avoids specifics altogether, it's because her routine has changed in ways she doesn't want you to see. Sometimes the evidence isn't in what she says but in what she avoids saying. Silence about parts of her day, glossing over details, or giving generic answers like, "Eat was fine," when she used to share more openly. All of these point to a routine she's trying to keep hidden. Even her physical routine may shift. A change in grooming habits, more time spent getting ready before leaving the house, or sudden changes in sleep patterns can all be signals. If she starts staying up later than usual, waking earlier, or spending more time away from shared spaces without explanation, those are patterns worth noticing. Cheating requires planning, and planning always disrupts the natural flow of life. The truth is, routine changes don't lie. A woman can control her words, she can guard her phone, she can cover her tracks in many ways, but altering her daily rhythm leaves evidence. Consistency is a natural byproduct of honesty, while inconsistency often points to deception. When her habits shift in ways that feel unnatural or disconnected from the person you knew, you are seeing the impact of a divided life. Cheating demands space, and space must be carved out of existing routines. That carving always leaves gaps in time, in availability, in intimacy, and in the way she shows up for you. Those gaps may come with excuses, but the pattern behind them reveals the truth. You don't need to catch her in the act to know something is off. All you need to do is pay attention to the way her days no longer align with the rhythm you once trusted. A woman who cheats always leaves evidence, and one of the loudest pieces of that evidence is the shift in routine that no amount of explanation can truly cover. Intimacy is one of the deepest markers of connection in a relationship. It is not only about physical closeness, but about the way two people share space, affection, energy, and vulnerability. When a woman is fully invested in her relationship, intimacy flows naturally. She laughs freely, she touches you without hesitation, her eyes meet yours with warmth, and even in silence there is comfort. That kind of closeness cannot be faked because it comes from genuine emotional presence. But when cheating begins, intimacy is one of the first places the change becomes noticeable. It may not be loud or obvious at first, but over time the shifts build, and you can feel the difference even if you cannot yet explain it. One of the clearest signs is emotional withdrawal. She may stop sharing her thoughts, her dreams, or even the small details of her day. Conversations that once felt rich and full of connection begin to feel transactional, as if she is giving only enough to keep the peace. This withdrawal creates distance that you can feel, even when you are physically close to her. Where intimacy once meant confiding in each other and leaning on each other for support, now there is a wall, subtle but steady. Cheating requires emotional energy, and when that energy is redirected elsewhere, what remains for the current relationship is minimal and hollow. Physical intimacy also changes in noticeable ways. For some women, desire for their partner fades because their needs are being fulfilled elsewhere. Touch becomes less frequent, affection less genuine, and intimacy may feel more like a chore than an expression of love. Where she once reached for your hand naturally, now she avoids prolonged contact. Where kisses once carried warmth, now they feel quick or absent. Even the smallest gestures, like resting against you on the couch or leaning in during a conversation, can become scarce. These changes may not be dramatic, but when you know what closeness used to feel like, the difference is unmistakable. For others, the shift in intimacy goes the opposite way. Guilt can push a woman to overcompensate, showering her partner with sudden bursts of affection or unusual levels of physical attention. At first, this may seem like a positive change, but when affection feels exaggerated or inconsistent, it is often masking something deeper. The rhythm of intimacy is disrupted. It either dries up completely or comes in waves that do not match the natural flow of the relationship. True intimacy has balance. Guilty intimacy feels uneven, forced, or timed to distract suspicion. Another powerful marker is the change in how she responds to your intimacy. You may try to engage her with affection, but instead of warmth, you meet resistance or indifference. She might pull away more quickly, claim she is tired, or make excuses that leave you feeling rejected. Even if she allows closeness, the quality of her presence is different. Her body may be there, but her mind is somewhere else. On the other hand, if she is overcompensating, she might initiate intimacy in ways that feel unfamiliar, as if trying to prove something rather than naturally connect. Either way, the shift is not just in frequency but in depth, and you feel the difference between being desired and being managed. The most telling aspect of intimacy shifts is the erosion of connection. You may find that eye contact is avoided, that laughter comes less easily, or that the simple comfort of being together feels strained. When intimacy fades, so does the sense of being truly seen and valued. Cheating disrupts the bond because intimacy requires honesty, and dishonesty creates distance. Even if she tries to hide the truth, the lack of alignment reveals itself in how she holds you, how she speaks to you, and how she looks at you. The closeness you once felt begins to feel manufactured, and no amount of effort can fully disguise the absence of genuine connection. What makes these shifts so powerful as evidence is that they cannot be fully controlled. A woman can guard her phone, she can craft careful excuses, she can even maintain routines that seem believable. But intimacy exists in the space between two people, and it cannot be faked without eventually showing cracks. When she pulls away emotionally, when her physical affection changes in rhythm or depth, when her presence feels more like distance than comfort, the truth is already in front of you. Cheating always leaves signs, and intimacy is one of the loudest places where the evidence surfaces. You may not have proof in the form of messages or confessions, but you feel it in your heart and body. The absence of warmth, the inconsistency of affection, the lack of genuine closeness, these are not coincidences. They are the natural result of her connection being given to someone else. Intimacy is the mirror of the relationship's soul, and when that soul is divided, the reflection always changes. Awareness and paranoia may look similar on the surface, but in reality, they are worlds apart. In relationships, this distinction becomes crucial because when trust starts to feel shaky, it's easy for the mind to spiral. Awareness is calm, observant, and rooted in reality, while paranoia is chaotic, desperate, and built on fear. When it comes to the possibility of cheating, a woman who strays will always leave clues behind, but how you respond to those clues determines whether you maintain your dignity or destroy your peace. The goal is not to become a detective obsessed with uncovering every detail, but to sharpen your ability to see what is already there without drowning in suspicion. Awareness is about paying attention to patterns. When someone's energy, routines, or intimacy shifts, those changes mean something. They are not random. A man who is aware notices when conversations lose depth, when schedules stop making sense, or when affection feels forced. He doesn't brush these things aside, but he doesn't jump to conclusions either. Instead, he gathers them like puzzle pieces, looking for a picture that makes sense. Awareness does not rely on imagination, it relies on evidence that consistently shows itself through behavior. Paranoia, on the other hand, is what happens when fear takes over the mind. Instead of observing, paranoia assumes. Instead of waiting for patterns, it creates them out of thin air. A delayed text suddenly becomes a full story in the mind. A busy workday turns into proof of betrayal. Paranoia drains energy and destroys relationships, even when cheating is not taking place, because it projects insecurity onto every small action. It is exhausting, both for the one who feels it and for the partner on the receiving end. That's why the balance between awareness and paranoia is so important. You must learn to see clearly without letting fear invent what isn't there. Cheating is rarely hidden perfectly, and a woman who cheats will always leave evidence. But it takes awareness to catch those signs without spiraling into obsession. Awareness requires stillness, the ability to step back and observe without letting emotions cloud judgment. For example, if she suddenly becomes distant, awareness notices the change and asks honest questions about it. Paranoia, however, reacts by demanding to see her phone or accusing her without proof. Awareness opens the door for truth, paranoia slams it shut with distrust. There is also a level of self-trust required in awareness. Intuition is one of the strongest signals in human relationships. You often feel the distance before you can prove it. Your body knows when energy has shifted, when affection has changed, when consistency has broken. Awareness respects this inner knowing while also being patient enough to watch for confirmation in actions. Paranoia, however, mistakes anxiety for intuition, and instead of being patient, it rushes to judgment. The key difference is that awareness gathers, paranoia assumes. Being aware also means understanding that your peace matters. If the evidence of change continues to pile up, you don't need to snoop, chase, or beg for answers. Awareness allows you to recognize when a relationship is no longer aligned with honesty and decide how you want to move forward. Paranoia, however, keeps you stuck, desperately searching for absolute proof, often at the expense of your self-respect. It ties your worth to the outcome of her behavior, while awareness roots your worth in your own ability to see clearly and choose wisely. Cheating is painful, and the suspicion of it can be just as heavy, but living in paranoia will destroy you faster than the truth ever could. When you are aware, you give yourself the strength to see signs without losing yourself to fear. You notice the late nights, the vague explanations, the shift in intimacy, but you do not let those things make you frantic. You let them inform you. You listen to your intuition, you observe her behavior, and you allow reality to reveal itself. Awareness protects your peace because it is grounded. It does not require endless chasing or questioning. It only requires that you trust what you see and feel when patterns are undeniable. When you live with awareness, you stand in your power. You know when something is off, you recognize the evidence without inventing it, and you choose how to respond with clarity rather than desperation. That is how you guard yourself from deception without destroying yourself in the process. The truth is that paranoia blinds, but awareness reveals. One leaves you restless and insecure, the other keeps you calm and prepared. If she cheats, her actions will show it. If she doesn't, consistency will confirm it. Either way, awareness will guide you to the truth, while paranoia will only keep you trapped in fear. That is why cultivating awareness over paranoia is one of the most important lessons in love, because it allows you to see clearly, protect your peace, and walk away with dignity when the signs can no longer be ignored. One of the hardest truths to accept in relationships is that signs of cheating are almost always present long before the betrayal becomes undeniable. They show up in changes of energy, shifts in routine, or distance in intimacy. They reveal themselves in the way someone stops investing in the bond or begins to carry guilt in their actions. Yet many people choose to ignore these signals, convincing themselves that things are fine, that they are overthinking, or that love will fix itself. This act of ignoring is not because the signs are invisible, but because acknowledging them forces us to confront painful realities we may not be ready to face. Still, pretending not to see what is right in front of you only delays the inevitable and often deepens the wound. When someone cheats, they cannot fully erase the evidence. They leave traces in the way they speak, in how they move through their days, and in how they interact with you. The human spirit picks up on these changes instinctively, often through intuition. That gut feeling, that subtle unease, is your body and mind alerting you to an inconsistency between what you know of your partner and what you are experiencing now. The signs may be small, a delayed response, a new routine, a lack of presence, but they accumulate into a pattern that cannot be ignored without consequence. Ignoring them doesn't erase them, it simply silences your own awareness and blinds you to truth. Many people ignore the signs because they fear loss. To admit that the signs point to cheating means to admit that the relationship may no longer be what it once was. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, or fear of confirming betrayal pushes people into denial. They hold on to excuses. She's just stressed. She's busy with work. Or, it's just a phase. While these explanations can sometimes be true, when the signs are consistent and multiply over time, denying them becomes a way of protecting yourself from the discomfort of truth rather than facing it. But denial is not protection, it is postponement of pain. The truth, no matter how delayed, eventually forces its way through. Another reason people ignore the signs is hope. Hope that things will return to normal, that the woman will rediscover her commitment, or that the distance will close on its own. Hope is powerful, but when misplaced, it becomes a trap. Hoping against the evidence means choosing comfort over clarity, and while it may feel easier in the short term, it leaves you vulnerable to deeper hurt when the truth finally comes to light. Hope is healthy only when paired with honesty. Without honesty, hope becomes self-deception. What makes ignoring the signs so dangerous is that it slowly erodes your self-respect. Each time you notice something that feels wrong but choose to dismiss it, you teach yourself to distrust your own intuition. You silence the inner voice that is trying to protect you. Over time, this damages not only your ability to see the truth in the current relationship, but also your confidence in future ones. Ignoring the signs is not just about protecting the relationship, it often ends up breaking your trust in yourself. Choosing not to ignore the signs, on the other hand, is not about paranoia or jumping to conclusions. It is about allowing yourself to see what is happening without turning away. It means recognizing patterns of inconsistency, acknowledging changes in intimacy, and listening to your intuition when it whispers that something is wrong. It means being brave enough to accept that the relationship may not be what you thought it was and valuing your own peace more than your attachment to denial. This awareness gives you the power to make choices, not from fear but from clarity. When you stop ignoring the signs, you place yourself in control. You no longer wait passively for betrayal to confirm itself. You begin asking the hard questions, paying attention to the answers, and making decisions that honor your dignity. If the signs reveal a truth you don't want to face, at least you are facing it on your terms rather than being blindsided later. The pain of acknowledging cheating is sharp, but it is far less damaging than the slow burn of years spent denying what you already knew deep down. Ultimately, ignoring the signs does not save you, it only prolongs the suffering. The signs are not meant to torture you, they are meant to guide you. They are the clues your partner leaves, whether intentionally or not, that point you toward the reality of your relationship. To ignore them is to turn your back on yourself. To acknowledge them is to respect yourself enough to see clearly and act wisely. Cheating always leaves signs, but the real question is whether you will choose to see them or allow fear, hope, and denial to blind you until the truth can no longer be hidden.